Hi, I'm Scrimshire and I'm going to do another walkthrough of one of my tracks with you. This one is for the song The Pile, which was written with Cleveland Watkiss, and it also features on strings Beverly Harling and with an arrangement by Frank Moon and Beverly Harling, and Vince Vella and Philip Harper on percussion. And I think the rest of it's me, so I'm going to take you through how we put that together. Back on the previous album, Believers Volume 1, there's a track called Lost in Space and Time, and it starts off as a kind of slow disco kind of groove thing. It features Bessie. It's amazing. I think you should listen to it. She makes it amazing. About sort of 2/3 of the way through, it flips and goes into this other kind of groove, and there's a lot more guitar drive in it and piano. And there's just this whole vibe that I just completely fell in love with, and so from that point I really kept wanting to explore that as the beginning of a track. So the first thing to do was to pick up the guitar. This beauty, been with me for a long old time now. And what I'm going to do is going to put a video up here that is actually me initially playing with ideas for this. And it's really loose, but I had that sound, that ba-dum bum ba-la-dum bum. I was playing with a couple of open chords, and those notes were kind of jumping out at me. So they weren't written as such, but they kind of appeared in the sonics of the way the piece was coming together, and I could keep hearing them recurring just through accidentally hitting them. I think as I was playing. I'm not a great player, you know, and certainly when I was doing this track, it'd been a long time since I played guitar very much. So I pulled that out as an actual kind of riff and put that into the track that became the song. But before I tend to go into recording now, I'm much more certain now about making sure that I've at least explored all the songwriting ideas on the instrument before I get into the production phase, and have a few sections that I can play with, and a sense of how the song kind of evolves. And I'm kind of loose with that, and this song really shows that in the original demo version. There are 7-bar loops, there's 5-bar loops, there's 4-bar loops. It just keeps, I change the chords when I want to, as opposed to, oh, okay, we're in sort of bar 3 and then we're coming back round again, so we're ready, we should be coming back round to this. Once I had all those chords together, then I sat down and I got a groove together. I don't really like necessarily jumping straight into a drum beat anymore. So I grabbed some percussion that I felt would give me a really good feel. Just a sample that I had sitting around, possibly taken off Splice or somewhere like that. And with that groove, then I would have gone through and played the song in its various parts. The first step was to play in all the various guitar parts that I had in my head, which was actually quite complicated. There's a verse section, a kind of intro verse section, a bridge section, but it's very long and it's very involved. There is a bridge in itself, then there's this kind of second section, a third section, then you kind of get into a chorus. And as I initially visualized it, it then breaks back down, does that all again before doing a final complete change into a whole other vibe at the very end of the song. Made it nearly 9 minutes long, too much for anyone. So we had the groove, and we had that from the percussion, and we had the guitar. First stage would have been then to try and do a drum beat, and I did that with a sample pack that Chris Boot, I've been working with loads, you know, with him playing the drums anyway. He created this amazing sample pack. It's available through Albert's Favourites on the website, in fact. Obviously I wasn't quantizing, and I decided that was fine. It's a loose groove, and there's mistakes, and it's fine. That was too much to use throughout the entire track, so there is a simpler version. And you can see what I've done here, actually, you can hear, is I've got 2 drum snare sounds here, one that's dry and one that's going to a reverb. which is actually the Galaxy Reverb, which is like a tape echo emulator. So they're running at they're side by side, so I could just program when I wanted reverb to drop. And it's the same at the end. So I had 2 grooves that I knew I wanted to use there. And once I got that, I could really start putting the structure together. I could have my verse sections, and I could then break into what was going to be the chorus, which then gave me the basis to drop in the bass line. I'm a little bit nervous about soloing the bass because I know for a fact it's terrible, but it just, once it was in the track, it didn't give me too many problems. I mean, you can hear my big problem is obviously that I wasn't properly stopping notes, so that definitely caused its challenges in the mix later on, but laziness or whatever, I decided not to go back and do it. It was just about holding together. I think then I dropped some pianos on. Oh, Rhodes, in fact. And there is piano in here. All just played off the Nord. And this is what we had really initially. There is one other section that's towards the end. It's very sloppy. But it felt like a groove. It worked with the beat, and I was so into it. I actually remember when I got this to a pretty decent demo stage, messaging Dave Core and sort of saying, Dave, I've written this really great piece of music, but it's 7 minutes and 15 seconds into a song, and I don't know if I'm mad to leave it there or whether I should draw it out and write a separate song with it. And he kind of said leave it where it is, so I did. So there's a really good bit in this song if you ever get there. It's like 7 minutes in. So let's go and have a little look at where we got to. I'm going to open up the next part, the next project. Once I had all that stuff together, one of the things I knew I immediately wanted to do was to replace the sample percussion. I tend to want to do that rather than using loops that are available out there. They're great for getting started from a songwriting perspective, but I'm always going to want to kind of redo them. Whereas this was the original percussion. They then laid down they sent me they'd play through the whole track, and there's lots of ad-libbing and little extra bits and pieces that are in there, and things get busy real quickly, and I will often end up really simplifying those arrangements, so I'll end up taking down to just very straight clean loop sections that I want, and then cut through, take the favourite ad-libs and then use them when I need them in very specific parts of the song. Quite often when I'm sending these demos, they're just not fully realised as an arrangement yet. So they're playing in lots of places that actually, you know, it feels right to them, but as I get closer to what the song needs to be, it doesn't make sense anymore. So simplifying their bits helps me get that right. The other thing at this point that I'd done was speak with Cleveland, and we spoke at length about what we wanted this song to represent, what we wanted it to be. You know, it's a very cinematic piece of music, but something really serious wanted to be said with it, and we both knew what that represented. And Cleveland really captured that in depth. So this is what we got to with Cleveland.
That is no chip. That is the bruise you left centuries ago. Still it is so.
It's just amazing. And with what Cleveland sent me, the song was still really quite extended at this point. There were much longer breaks in between changes, and he'd left those gaps. And so where there's cuts here, it's because what I decided was that the arrangement was still too bloated and it really needed to come down and be way, way more condensed. So where he'd left gaps, I just cut them out. I cut out the music that was in those gaps, and with that, the gaps in his vocals, and brought it all together. So we ended up with this much more punchy kind of vocal that's just constantly evolving and moving through. And there's way less gaps, way less rests. We keep it way more intense, and the music is constantly building. There is a funny thing, and Cleveland won't mind because it's my mistake, not his. The chorus at the very end repeats 3 times at the end rather than just once at the beginning, and I thought what would be good would be to have him kind of go up a few notes each time, deliver a little bit more intensity on each repeat of it. So I WhatsApped him a message saying, the bit where it repeats at the end, could you do me a section where it gets a bit more intense? And rather than the chorus bit that I meant in my head, he thought I meant this section.
People say it's time, power.
Sounds amazing. And what ended up happening was he sent me another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tracks of vocals to layer that up. Listen to this.
People say it's time, power to the people say it's time, power to the people say.
And it just delivers so much more intensity that the song would be lost without that mistake having happened. So I am eternally grateful for my massive lack of communication skills. So now we're in the mix project. One of the big things, whilst Cleveland was working on the vocals, I was also having a conversation with my friends Beverly Harling and Frank Moon. I spoke to them about helping me get a string arrangement together for this song. I felt the more this song evolved, the more it felt like it had to happen. And they provided in terms of that. And boy, did they provide. I didn't do much to this. They recorded and then they bounced and sent me a stereo track of the strings. And once it was in the track with a bit of reverb, it didn't really need anything else. So let's just have a little listen to what they sent here. There is a little bit of cutting and pasting. I wanted to use something through the middle section that they'd felt was already busy enough. I didn't think it was busy enough. Bring it on. Once they sent the strings through, I actually then did some work kind of emulating and repeating what the strings were doing with the Moog. The other thing that I really love on this track is this Juno sound. It's so nasty, it's so great. It's like almost like an organ, but like really tripped out. And that just helped me emphasize one of the breaks that I was really having trouble just getting to sit quite right.
Tests, now action we see.
You've got to hear this because it's so good. Matt Gordon, aka Pi Eye Collective. So Matt did these bits of modular synth playing for me, and they sit back in the mix, but honestly without them they just add a little grouchy kind of interest, a wildness that's just ticking away underneath it, and it just elevates it for me. That string sound was a must-have. And then when Cleveland's vocal comes in for the first time, possibly my favourite moment on the entire record.
That is no chip. That is the bruise you left centuries ago.
And that is the Pile featuring Cleveland Watkiss.
Denied